Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Facebook Live. I am so excited to be joined by both Lily and Tommy Collison. Lily is joining us from Ireland. Tommy, you're joining us from California. But thank you both for joining us today.
You're welcome. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course. So Lily is the author of a recently published book called Bilateral Spasticity, and Tommy is her son. And today I really want to have a chat about lots of different things. Obviously, you know, diving deeper into the book and the reasons why you've written this book, Lily, but also Tommy, sort of hearing about some of your stories of growing up and in the dynamics, obviously, of this sort of family, because I think, you know, the fascinating thing, and I'll put sort of this out there to begin with, is that Tommy, you're also a writer. You graduated from NYU, and obviously, you know, now you've evolved into education, but you've got this similarity in how you want to educate and inform people, which is really quite remarkable. But Lily, I'll start with you. So when Tommy was born, do you just want to dive in a little bit about what it was like sort of growing, having Tommy grow up in Ireland?
Okay, like Tommy is the youngest of our three boys. So when Tommy was born, the other two boys were age 4 and 6, and Tommy arrived. So by then my husband and I were quite relaxed as parents. We thought we had cracked this parenting lark, and like Tommy arrived, but from the day after he was born, he cried incessantly. And it was like, so he was born on a Friday night. Saturday the crying started, and it was the pitch of the cry that was very unusual, I thought. And I asked for him to be seen by a paediatrician, and the paediatrician reassured me, no, everything's fine. And I very happily took her reassurance. But the incessant crying continued for 3 months. And like, I was trying to breastfeed Tommy, and the feeds were being returned, and it was just very difficult. You could imagine that in a busy family of 3 boys, you know, both parents working, and you know, obviously I was off with Tommy's birth, but it was still very difficult. And then after the 3 months, the crying stopped, and Tommy settled into a very placid and happy child. But over the next few months, he wasn't meeting his developmental milestones. You know, he wasn't able to sit, he wasn't able to stand. So he was termed developmentally delayed, and that continued until he was about 1. And there was still no diagnosis. You know, it was just this kind of, it was like, you know, it was just developmental delay. So I just took myself off for a second opinion, took Tommy off for a second opinion to a paediatrician. And as I say in the book, it was a straight talking a paediatrician, and he just examined Tommy and said, do you not know what's wrong with him? His CP. And he followed it up immediately with, and if I want to know how this child will turn out, I don't look at the child, I look at the mother. And that was, wow, you know what I mean? In the sense of, I felt, you know, I didn't, like other people said, wow, did he really say that to you? And I said, yeah, but I actually felt he was putting it up to me, you know, in the sense that, you know, you're being set a challenge. But that day when he told me Tommy had CP, I didn't even know what the term meant. I was familiar with the term, like I'd heard of cerebral palsy, but I didn't know what it meant. And I set about then educating myself, you know, and like it was over the next few years trying to educate myself in the condition, because it's a complex condition. And like Tommy has spastic diplegia, that type of CP, and I just found it hard to understand. So that's what led to sort of a lot of reading, a lot of studying, and eventually, Tommy, if you don't mind me saying, 25 years later, the publication of this book, you know, that's, you know, sort of what you learned, you know, like the learning started then, and it led me to just research and write this book.
I think it's such a remarkable story because, as you said, you know, it's 25 years of learning and education that have gone into this book. But, you know, to go back, you know, a couple of years earlier, I suppose, and to sort of look at your journey and Tommy, your journey as well. You know, obviously diagnosed at 12 months of age, and then what? what was, Tommy, what was your childhood like? What was it like growing up? Also with a mother like Lily, who is an absolute powerhouse on different things. What was it like growing up, I suppose, in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, it's kind of hard to know the counterfactual. Like, she is the best and only mother I've had. But I mean, kind of growing up, it was interesting because my diagnosis was kind of when mom got to work. And she kind of took it upon herself to learn everything she could, and to kind of make sure that this disability kind of impacted me no more than it needed to. That there were probably some things that I wasn't going to be able to do, that I was never going to be able to do. I was probably never going to be a professional footballer. But most people are probably not going to be professional footballers, and so there's an extent to which there was just this kind of pragmatism that mom brought to it, I think. And then as far as kind of growing up, I was the youngest of three, so I had two older brothers. We were all very, very close. We grew up in rural Ireland, so kind of in the middle of nowhere, with not much except kind of cows and computers around. And so, we were all very, very close. We all got into the internet pretty early when it came out. But yeah, I mean, kind of from a kind of diagnostic standpoint, or from the viewpoint of CP, mom always made sure that I saw like the PT, and we were kind of very, very religious about doing the homework that the PT gave us. And she was very, both very assertive in making sure that kind of these things got done in kind of a nice way, but very kind of very kind of adamant that the PT got done, while at the same time kind of I had a totally normal childhood apart from that, you know what I mean, like with all the kind of usual kind of family stuff. And yeah, so it was good.
So Lily, we talk about rural Ireland, right? And I think it's a pretty amazing story, going from rural Ireland now to sort of publishing this book and having the experiences that you've both had within the US. But, take us back then, because when obviously Tommy was young, the internet had just started. There wasn't Google, there wasn't these different things. And so, where did you start looking for, I suppose, what to do?
Yeah, like I suppose in those days, it was books, right? Like I would, I suppose we traveled a good bit, and I would, anywhere I was, bookshops were a target of mine, in the sense of to look at, sort of like any of the books that were written about CP, I would seek out, so anytime we were in a foreign, we were anywhere, I would seek out books. But I was very lucky because a community physical therapist who treated Tommy, but she knew I was very interested in learning, and she had actually worked at Great Ormond Street Hospital and had come back to Ireland, and she knew I was interested, and I just took it out. She gave me a copy, I've lost the dust cover over the years, of Dr. Gage at Gillette, his 1991 book. This is a book written by Dr. Gage, now retired. He was an orthopedic surgeon at Gillette, but this book was written by an orthopedic surgeon for orthopedic surgeons. I'm a mom, right? But I read this book cover to cover with the medical dictionary. Now, I didn't understand the half of it, but I still got an awful lot out of it. And it was the first time, like, obviously Tommy has CP, but he has spastic diplegia. And it was the first time I read about spastic diplegia. Like Dr. Gage had written a section on diplegia in this book. And like, for instance, when Tommy was diagnosed, he had a CAT scan. He had a CAT scan almost immediately, so he's diagnosed at 1, he had a CAT scan. And like, the consultant told me, things like, if I can, it was, sort of significant brain damage, not much active brain, go home and mind your other children, right? Because like on the scan, you can see the brain damage, but literally the consultant told me, go home and mind your other children. And yet Tommy was 1 at this stage, and he was a very alert and engaging child. Like he really, and I couldn't, like what the consultant was saying to me and the child I was holding, it just did not make sense, you know what I mean? And it wasn't that I was in denial. It wasn't, but I sort of thought, how can you say that? you know, not a much active brain. You can see the active brain going on here, you know what I mean? So I just parked what the consultant said in some little box in my mind, and it actually never came out since, because like, if you listen to Tommy today, you know, you would know there's plenty of active brain. But in Dr. Gage's book, it was the first time I read, so Tommy's about 7 at this stage, it was the first time I read that generally in spastic diplegia, there isn't a cognitive impairment. And, you know, I was also told to watch out for epilepsy. Generally in spastic diplegia, epilepsy isn't common, you know. So it was, I loved reading about spastic diplegia. That's what Tommy's diagnosis was. And that's what this book gave me. It was the first time I read specifics about spastic diplegia. And that's why I think it's very important for families, you know, to have educational materials by diagnosis. Like, I don't want to, you know, if I have throat cancer, I only want to learn about throat cancer. Don't tell me about other cancers. If my child, or if I have spastic diplegia, I only want to know about spastic diplegia. So I believe families need educational materials by diagnosis. So if my child's hemiplegia, give me hemiplegia information. If my child has diplegia, give me the information. So let's organize information by diagnosis. And sorry, that's a long answer. Sorry.
No, but I think it's important, right? Because it goes to that point of empowering ourselves with education and information. And I think it's actually really shaped, probably in a way, Tommy, kind of your career path, you know, and your knowledge, and Lily, the fact now that 25 years later, you've got to this, you know, point of writing a book. And, you know, I look at your, I suppose, your enthusiasm and your extensive knowledge now when it comes to cerebral palsy. And I think that's for everyone watching. You know, when we talk about cerebral palsy, as if anyone watched last night with my talk with Dr. Hank Chambers, he said cerebral palsies, it is a group of conditions that are very different from each other. You know, yes, they're all piled in together because of when that sort of brain injury may have occurred, but it's really are very different. And so understanding those differences and understanding what can be done about them is so important. And I think that's sort of really remarkable that you had sort of this foresight. And I think that the amazing thing is this go-getting attitude, Lily, that you've had. And so, Tommy, when you look at that, so your mum's done her research and done really good research. So for those watching as well, Dr. Jim Gage was at the forefront of cerebral palsy research, and, you know, is probably, if you want to say the godfather of cerebral palsy, he's pretty close to that. And, you know, definitely as a young physical therapist, that's who I was learning from. I was learning from the things that he was writing. So Lily, I think it's important that you got the opportunity to learn that as well. But Tommy, so what was it like the first time, I suppose, when you said, all right, I'm going to go to the US to have an operation? Like, as a young kid, were you scared, or what were your feelings?
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to what Mom was up to, because I remember this conversation. Like, I remember we were in the car, we were driving somewhere, and Mom kind of broached the subject of, oh, there's this surgery. Like, if there was a surgery that, you know, could do X, Y, and Z, you know, would you be interested in doing it? And I was like, kind of, yes, of course. And you know what I mean? She laid it out as this is what they would do, this is how it would benefit, you know the way that you have this problem today, well, this might help it because of, you know, and this kind of explanation that was both very kind of technically detailed, but suitable for an 8-year-old or whatever I was at the time. And I remember kind of, and I've always kind of been this way, of you know, tell me what I need to do, but like, I don't have Mom's brain for kind of the, you know, this muscle is connected to this bone, and if you rotate it 90 degrees, it whatever. I at the time, especially when I was 8, I was kind of like, just don't just like, will this benefit me? If it, like, in a year or two, will I be super glad that I had this surgery? And Mom was like, unequivocally yes. And I was like, all right, good enough for me. Like, if it's past Mom's vetting process, then cool, let's do it. And we went on to do that before Mom jumps in. We went on to do it, and I mean, Gillette is incredible in the sense that you kind of feel like you're on this kind of conveyor belt. And that sounds bad, but really is kind of very good, because that's kind of so predictable. They've done this so many times but they just know, okay, by day 2 of the morning, you'll be here, but by the afternoon you might start like this, that, and the other. It just like happens like clockwork. And I remember, because it was Dr. Gage who did the first surgery, he came into the pre-op room like right before I was going to go under, and was kind of making sure that mom and dad didn't have any last minute questions, and then he asked me if I had any questions as well before, just like kind of right before you were wheeled into the OR. And I said, actually, I do have a very important question. The nurse who did the intake said that kids who have the surgery get like a teddy bear after they come out, and just like, what color is that teddy bear? And to the extent that this was my most burning question, I think kind of shows that everything else was kind of so taken care of by both the kind of the surgeons and the nurses and kind of everyone who's involved in that process. We're kind of right back to mom, who kind of was so confident that this would be a benefit.
So I think it goes back to this point of creating this team, right? And Tommy, the fact that you were 8 and already comfortable with that team around you and not scared and feeling safe and all those different things is really a testament to you, Lily, and the team that you created. And this is sort of, I'd like to ask this question for you, because I think this is a question we get a lot, and particularly from families. So actually, everyone who's watching right now, please put your questions in the comment box. But Lily, I've got this question for you. So as a mother, obviously, first and foremost, obviously you are a mother, but how did you try to juggle those different things of being an advocate, back then having to do your own research, having to be potentially a therapist at times, and all those different things? Like, how did you manage that?
Probably with huge difficulty, but like first and foremost, I was a mother, like that, I never ever would thought of myself as a therapist. Like I thought, okay, like what I sort of felt I had to do was create the environment to let Tommy develop, what I mean? Like I knew the importance of, like, I didn't know, I was told the importance of movement, the importance of, say, like, so you have a child who has a problem with movement. Movement is even almost more important. Well, it's important for every child, but getting this child moving, like say Tommy walked when he was 3, but it took a huge input to achieve walking, and like just things like, you have a child who would like Tommy, movement didn't come natural to him, but you just had to encourage it. And like things like, I tried to create an environment around, like he had 2 older brothers. They used to make fun of, make games of lots of the exercises. So, the physical therapist would give us a program, but a lot of that became, sort of, you tried, like my husband was very supportive, and he would be very involved in the program, but also the older children, and also we had babysitters. Everybody was, sort of played a part, what I mean? Like we had a very good local playground, and like Tommy used to go to that a lot, but it didn't have to be me doing it all the time. It was a team effort. And like, it was like the only thing probably I would make sure that it happened, what I mean? But it didn't mean that I had to do every element of it, because you would just burn out, you just had to keep sight that it was all happening, because you still had 3 children to feed, you still had work to do, you still had, there was school, there was homework, so there was a lot going on. So you just, I suppose, in a sense, you just had to be organised. But as long as you sort of, I wasn't afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, right? Like, who is your support network, and who are those people around you to help?
Yeah.
And I think even, all of us right now, it's probably even amplified even more, obviously during the year that we've all just had. Like, what does that look like? And so, Tommy, I'll ask you this next question, because you've sort of told me a little bit, but, going back to the story of how you learned to swim, because I think this is really important, right? So it's not just, I'm a physical therapist, that's my background. You didn't learn by a therapist. You didn't learn, in a hospital. How did you learn to swim?
Yeah, so I learned to swim because my older brothers, John and Patrick, were tired of putting on the like armband float things. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of were like, okay, we can either teach them to swim, or we can either teach them to swim, or we can keep having to do this like day in, day out. Yeah. I think we were like on holiday in France or something. We were camping. But yeah, they taught me how to swim that way. And there's always this older sibling problem where you're always someone's little brother, and it can be the best PT intervention in the world, but it came out of a desire to just be a little bit more lazy. And I got to reap the benefit.
No, totally. But that goes to show, and the motivation that you probably had, as a young child, wanting to do that because, all right, my brothers told me to do it, so I'm going to do it. And I think that's where it's so important, creating this dynamic of yes, learning and elements of, obviously motor development and what it is, but it is really a family dynamic, particularly as children are growing up, and bringing everybody involved into that to make it fun and enjoyable. And it shouldn't feel like a chore. But so Lily, so
like
now
therapy,
we're sort of
like therapy, it can be, a lot of it can be games, you know what I mean? A lot of it can be fun, and it's just getting, sort of thinking out how to achieve that.
So Lily, you've now got to this stage, we'll say Tommy's at school, and you're still in Ireland, everyone's still in Ireland at this stage, and going back and forth now, potentially, for different surgeries and things like that. How did you manage the team? So you would go potentially have more specialized interventions and surgeries. Would you then go, when you went back to Ireland, have a local team that was supporting as well?
Yeah, like we had when Tommy had Semmel's single event multi-level surgery when he was 9 at Gillette, and then he developed very bad knee pain when he was 16, so he had further surgery when he was 16, which got the knee pain disappeared overnight, and then a small surgery when he was 18, and this year he can talk about it himself, he had a SDR, but we were very lucky. Like we went to Gillette for his surgeries, but we would always come back and slot back into the team here, in Ireland, and like we did have the benefit of, really supportive professionals here, even though like we supplemented what was available here in Ireland with going to Gillette. We still had very supportive, the Carmel, the physical therapist who first introduced me to Gillette, and Dr. Gage, there were, as Tommy used to call, 2 Anns at the Central Remedial Clinic in Dublin, which would be our national treatment centre. There were 2 Anns, a physical therapist and a gait lab person. They were very important in our lives. Mike Walsh in the gait lab, the late Professor O'Brien in the gait lab, the Central Media Clinic had a very good gait lab. Dr. Hensey, a paediatrician. So they would, we would come back to Ireland and slot back in. So a lot of the rehab was done in Ireland, but we would go, if the treatments weren't available, we did go abroad for the treatments.
Because I think that's great advice to sort of give to families or give to people who are maybe exploring but uncertain, to go, well, how am I going to get that continued support after the fact? If I go somewhere else outside of where I live to go get, some specialized treatment, what's going to happen when I get home? And I think it's really important to have that team back locally where you are and make sure that that's there. But also, if you've done the research and you've done these different things and you've found somewhere where you would like to go, having the confidence to go there. And I think, Lily, it's pretty remarkable, the research that you did at the time, to find out the information that you found, as I said, in an environment that isn't like today. It's very easy to get on today and to Google something and to find an answer quite quickly. But, to have the confidence, and I know not everyone said, okay, yes, you're making the right decision. Like you did definitely had people who potentially said you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, it is funny because I reflected on that in the book as to, where we got the confidence to go to Gillette for particularly for the first surgery. And I wrote in the book, it was a logical explanation of the primary, secondary and tertiary problems in spastic diplegia, that the primary are the neurological problems caused by the brain damage. The secondary are the growth problems, the problems that develop in muscles and bones and joints as a result of growth. And then the tertiary problems, which are the coping problems that that develop to circumvent, other, primary or secondary problems. And like, it was just that logical explanation. It just made sense to me. And like, it was, I quickly realized that surgery in cerebral palsy care and CP care, you need surgeons, orthopedic surgeons, who specialize in this, who are doing it day in, day out. Like, we're all used to, say, hearing about knee replacement surgery or hip replacement surgery, and like, if any of us if I needed to have a knee replacement, I'd be looking, who specializes in knee replacements, you know what I mean? And I would go to that orthopedic surgeon. In CP, when Tommy had his surgery, he had surgery at hips, knees, and feet level. So we're not talking about a knee replacement. Like, a knee replacement is so simple by comparison with orthopedic surgery and CP, because what the surgeon is trying to do is do all the corrections in a single operation, and it's multiple corrections. Like, when Tommy had his semels, he had 13 procedures, right? And it's having orthopedic surgeons who specialize in this, because it's complex surgery. And like, so I knew that Dr. Gage, Dr. Novacek, they had, and others had specialized in CP care. And the other thing, and I suppose it's the science background in me, it's the bit of the scientist in me, that this surgery was supported by outcome studies. Like, Tommy had the surgery in 2004, even back in 2004, so we're talking about 16 years ago. Even then, Gillette had published outcome studies on, how say, here's a group of 50 children, how did they, what were their outcomes like, say, 2 years after surgery? And I could read this paper showing, and like, it wasn't that, like, this percentage of children improved on these measures, this percentage on this measure, and this, and that spoke to me. And then the last thing, it was extraordinary care delivered with extraordinary, like, it was the attitude of humility, care, and respect for children with CP that I sort of observed at Gillette, and I found that extraordinary.
Yeah, no, and I think, it's this idea of specialties, not for everything. Sometimes you can have, more generalized care depending on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, actually, finding specialists in this area. And I think when with anything that we do from the foundation, and absolutely, Gillette Children's Hospital is a phenomenal location, and Dr. Novacek has supported, obviously, the CP resource and contributed to a lot of different things on there. But, Tommy, so we talk about this idea now of going, all right, this is specialized care. You mentioned before about feeling like you're on a conveyor belt. Do you remember the first time, and I'm sure you do, where kind of now you're on your own, and it's not you're on your own because you don't have a very supportive mother, but that moment when you're like, okay, I'm now going to start taking responsibility for this. This is my life, and what can I do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think this happens in a bunch of small ways as you grow up, and so to the extent kind of taking charge of your CP care is kind of just another in a long line of things. Like, when I would have gone off to college, there was kind of so much that changed, and there was no one enforcing at bedtime. There was no, you know what I mean? I was kind of completely responsible in what I got up to, for better or for worse. CP care, I think, just came along with that towards the end. And I found a PT at NYU because I knew that without mom kind of nearby, I would need someone keeping me honest, making sure that I was still doing all of the exercises and everything. And I guess proving what a small world is, that the PT that I had in Gillette, so I had a PT at NYU who I worked with, and the PT at Gillette had gone through NYU's, I guess, graduate PT program and knew him, and just kind of a very, very small world in the end.
I feel like this world is a very small world, though. We all know each other, and which is wonderful, because this has this sense of community for sure. But yeah, all right, so you sort of at school, were there any, I suppose, this autonomy, health autonomy, we talk about that sort of term a lot.
Totally.
And it's been mentioned that you've just had a surgery recently.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next, just on that surgery. I mean, I kind of went to went back to Gillette for like a check-in or whatever, and didn't really expect a surgery to be kind of on the cards. I thought I was just kind of presenting myself just to check in and make sure that everything was kind of going as it was before. And you know, Mum wasn't there, so I was just I took a day or two off work and I flew to Minneapolis. And when they floated the idea of surgery, I was like, oh, I really wish Mum was here, either like on the phone or like in Minneapolis, just because she's the one who has the kind of encyclopedic knowledge of how everything works and what this would be doing. And I mean, with Mum's book, I had the benefit of where, you know, as I think she said, you know, I kind of left that appointment and I was like, okay, we're like considering it. And I was like, what even is an SDR? And kind of went back to my email, and her mom had emailed me a draft of the book, and kind of just like Command F, just like selective doors, and like found the passage and read it, and we've had a clearer idea after that. But yeah, I mean, as with kind of most things in life, there comes a point where, you know, the buck stops with you. And Mum was good with that kind of gradual release of responsibility, that as I was a teenager and as I was 13 or 14, I had kind of slightly more control. And I think, yeah, as evidenced by the most recent surgery, that was really where it kind of was on display.
Yeah, no, and I think it's something that, you know, is so important, and something we hear a lot of is going, okay, so when is the right time? And obviously the right time is going to be very different to everyone, but it's being involved in your care from the very beginning and having that option to make choices. And, you know, as you said, Tommy, even when you were 8, you were still making choices in a way, and your choice was you just wanted the teddy bear, but, you know, like that there's still choices, right? And you're still part of the conversations, and you were never not part of the conversations about what was going on.
Yeah.
Actually, just when you say that, Rachel, it reminds me, Kerr Graham has written about that in terms of, particularly in adolescence. To be honest, I think parenting is the only relationship where separation is a good outcome. You know, there's really, you know, you have to be preparing for separation. You know, it's not an overnight thing. You have to be kind of preparing for it all the way along, like this childhood. In adolescence, you know, you're definitely giving away, you know, sort of that the person has to take responsibility for their own healthcare, because by the time they leave home, they have to be in charge, you know what I mean? So it's like passing on the baton gradually over, you know, a number of years, definitely. But Kerr Graham wrote about it at one stage, you know, that adolescence, you know, sort of, I think in children, but definitely adolescents, you know, the decisions to have surgery, you know, they must be, you know, like adolescent, you know, the children and adolescents, you know, very involved in that decision, because, you know, it can't be a parent, it has to be a parent and the child, and certainly and the adolescent, you know what I mean? Like that, you know, they have, you know, I think the child and then certainly the adolescent, they have to be very involved in their care, and, you know, insofar as it's possible to take it over. Like Tommy had surgery at 18. I wasn't even in America for it. His older brothers looked after him. So we were in Ireland. We went on holidays. He, you know, I knew he was in good care, but we, you know, at 18, we weren't even present at the surgery.
No, and I think that's really amazing. It's a testament to, obviously, Tommy, your confidence in where you were at that stage of your life, and obviously the independence that you'd instilled in, you know, all your sons, Lily, and really, you know, that they, even your older brothers, have the confidence to be there and to support you through that, but also knowing, okay, it's okay, he's going to be okay. You know, he's a young, independent, incredibly intelligent young man. He's going to be okay in this situation. So it's really phenomenal.
I can genuinely say I wasn't back in Ireland worrying. I really wasn't, because like I trusted the boys and I trusted the care at Gillette. You know what I mean? I wasn't worried, you know, and like I didn't feel now, okay, you know, sort of like the men in my life made this decision, you know, that they were well able to look after it, you know. But I wasn't
part of the decision as well. This wasn't this wasn't a one moment.
No. But what I'm saying is that I was very comfortable not to be there, you know, which is just, you know. Anyway, we've talked about that.
And so, Tommy, all right, so you've now done all these different things. You're at uni. Where do you think your love for writing and books and I suppose education came from? For those that don't know, actually, Tommy, can you actually tell everyone, because I don't even think we said it at the beginning, like what you do now? I'm sorry, we didn't actually do a proper introduction to what you do.
No, not at all. I keep out of trouble. That's about the long and short of it. No, so I work in communication and business strategy at a startup called Lambda School, which is essentially an online job training and technical education program. So the students learn from technical instructors, they learn how to program, and then we help them get jobs afterwards. And so it's essentially kind of a retraining program for folks who want to break into tech. And yeah, I mean, like, mom and dad were always super interested in education, and so I think it was something that was kind of super important. They were big readers when we were growing up, and since we grew up in the middle of nowhere, it wasn't as if you could kind of come home from school and then like go outside and like play with your neighbors or your friends, because we kind of didn't really have neighbors. And so we were all very kind of self-directed learners and kind of just developed interests. And I mean, John and Patrick, my little brothers, went into computer programming very, very early. I came to it kind of late, but I was always interested in kind of reading and writing, and I would, on the Windows 97 computer at home, be writing kind of like stories in Microsoft Word or whatever. Kind of fast forward, when I was in high school, I wrote a good bit, studied journalism in college, and I think, I think part of it is just kind of the right place at the right time, that I happened to know someone starting an education startup in 2017, 2018. But I do think kind of this idea of expanding opportunity to people and giving, taking advantage of the internet, as it were, to kind of connect people, connect really good instructors and really good job trainers with people who wanted to learn technical skills or help get a new job. I think is kind of really exciting and really fascinating. And I mean, we had a student go through Lambda School who graduated a couple months ago and got a job, and they're legally blind, and they are now working as a professional software engineer. So I guess from that perspective, it is exciting in the sense that it's not just an education company or a job training program, that this does allow people with disabilities to have opportunities they may not otherwise have, to give them another option that isn't just going into school every day. And there's an extent to which kind of increasing student choice and just giving people more options is one of the really exciting parts.
This idea of accessibility and the diversity that you're going to have, it's good for business too. When we look at it this way, the opportunities that you get, you're getting people who are coming from different perspectives. And, for those that don't know, Lambda is, as Tommy said, a completely online environment, which right now I feel like everyone's going online. So you're definitely, ahead of the game without a doubt. But the model is also very inclusive for lots of people from very diverse backgrounds. It's a place where accessibility is at the forefront of what you're doing. And I think that's sort of really extraordinary. But so Lily, we'll go back. So Tommy's, the journalist, he's written some really incredible things. So actually the first time I heard about Tommy's story was I was Googling incessantly when we're trying to develop CP resource to try and find contributors to CP resource. And I came across actually the essays that Tommy had written about growing up with cerebral palsy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to, reach out and meet this person. And, but Lily, but now you're the author. So how's that it's sort of come full circle, that, it's this sort of incredible piece that, you've gone through all these different things and now you're the author. It's like you're learning from Tommy. It's like it's completely reversed.
It is actually, I think when, like, I would say the fact of Tommy's interest in journalism did influence me. Like put it this way, when I wrote the book for the mother I was back then. And like, the book is for not just for mothers of children, it's for across, it explains spastic diplegia across the lifespan and its management across the lifespan. So it was for the mother of a child, but also for the adolescent and the adult, so that, I can give this book to Tommy. This is spastic diplegia in adulthood, because I was very interested in the condition. It's a lifelong condition, so the condition across the lifespan. But definitely Tommy influenced me. It's like the saying, what is it, Tommy? Insanity is hereditary. You get it from your children. So writing is hereditary. That I obviously got it from my children. That like Tommy's interest in writing, and he would certainly have been super encouraging. Like when I sort of talked, like I had always said, like this was the book I wanted when I got the diagnosis. But I always said there needs to be a book by diagnosis, you know what I mean? And he certainly was super encouraging to me writing it, you know what I mean? And it was kind of nice because like he would have read drafts and that, you know, so it was lovely for him to be involved while I was writing it, as well as, you know, so, but it definitely, he had an influence on me.
Yeah, no, I just think it's really quite remarkable when you look at obviously your relationship and the family dynamics that you have. You know, it's really commendable. And it's really wonderful to be talking to both of you, actually. Like, I think it's just, you know, you've got so much to offer, and obviously your dedication to education and having people understand, you know, bilateral spasticity and cerebral palsy and what that is and how that really impacts life, but more importantly, how you can feel empowered to change. And so there is a couple of questions that have come through. So I do want to sort of acknowledge those. So Carl is just sort of letting us know. So I was 9 years old with CP, and my family moved from Dublin, Ireland to Boston back in the day, and he's now in Orlando. So I just wanted to do a shout out that he's listening today. But we've also got another comment here. And I think, Lily, you and I have touched base on this before as well. It's about, you know, this comment is actually about, okay, we need to find a cure and do these different things. But to more importantly, I think it goes to, you know, thinking about we need to be on the forefront of medical science and making sure that people understand what is available to them and how to keep pushing that forward. But can you sort of give your comments on that a little bit?
Yeah, like absolutely. Like what I wanted to do in the book was that this is where medical science is at in the management of spastic diplegia, right? So this is the limits of, like, I wanted, like Tommy obviously had a brain injury, and it's you know, there's no cure at the moment. Hopefully that, you know, that some more, you know, but there is no cure at the moment. But I wanted his management, the management of his condition, to be at the limits of medical science, not postal code, not where we lived. You know, I want whatever were the best treatments, I want to, you know, try to make sure that we could avail of them. But in a sense, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And that's why I wanted to write a book, because both I wanted to empower other families that this is where the management is at, but also the importance of research, because this is where medical science is now. Let's keep pushing medical science, because, you know, like, it's not static, you know what I mean? This is the best management, like these are the evidence-based best practice treatments at the moment, but let's continue the research and let's hopefully keep you know, upping the bar, you know. So that's why, like, I just wanted, you know, to be at the limits of medical science and to keep the you know, like, I want to keep the pressure on all our services. Like, people with CP deserve good treatment. They deserve, you know, so I want people to, you know, have the information of that as of now, these are the best treatments. And so that we can lobby our services to provide these treatments. You know, I think that's important, you know. So, like, I didn't know when Tommy was newly diagnosed, I didn't understand the condition or its management. This is what I put in the book. And that's what, you know, I want people to know, so that, you know, we can all help to improve services for people with CP, because people with CPs deserve it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a absolutely really and sort of important thing to reiterate is it's going, okay, you know, yes, there isn't a quote unquote cure, but there is so much that can be done. There's so many wonderful things that we can do. And I think it goes even beyond healthcare. And obviously the book is really focused on healthcare, which is really important. So I think there's so many different elements of people's lives. But even, Tommy, the work that you're doing right now, the expansion of getting people to think, okay, outside of the box when it comes to employment, when it comes to, you know, learning and education, all those things are so important, because we can all move the needle forward. And it can really, I think it's extraordinary what's going to potentially happen in the next 5 years. But just a sort of a final question for both of you. I suppose, what's next?
You go, Tommy.
I mean, I think there's kind of two ways of answering this, in the sense of what's next for kind of Tommy with CP. And I think that when I finished growing, I remember talking to a doctor who was saying, really, management of CP in adulthood looks a lot like, making sure that you stay flexible, making sure that you, stay in shape and strong, and go for walks and work out and do all that stuff, and stay healthy. And there's an extent to which that's kind of what all of us need. You know what I mean? That's no different to what John and Patrick need to do as to stay healthy adults. And so there's something kind of exciting about being an adult with CP, where when you're growing, there's kind of everything changes every which way, and when you grow, it's kind of hard to predict how things are going to lie and what things are going to look like. But once you're grown, this sort of becomes it. And maybe I'm lucky that they find a cure or a great new treatment or whatever. But for now, for the kind of immediate foreseeable future, there's kind of maintenance to do, but not a lot else going on. So that's kind of exciting there. And I mean, outside of it, apart from existing in a global pandemic, Lambda School, I think, I hope is going to go from strength to strength, kind of launching new initiatives. We are eyeing up kind of different curriculums, in the sense of right now it's just for coding, but there's kind of no reason, I think, that it couldn't be for other tracks as well, for other things to study.
The amazing thing about Lambda, right? It's a model of success, of seeing what can be done, sure, in tech and being, software engineers, but that model could be taken into lots of different fields. And I think that's really exciting.
Totally.
Lily, what's next for you?
I suppose, I'm very interested in the whole area of education. I'm very, in education of, sort of people with lifelong conditions in the whole education space. I suppose my background had always been in education. So just, that's an area I've always been interested in. But, and research, and all the proceeds of the book go to research, sort of I was interested in writing this book, and obviously I wrote it with the team at Gillette, but all the proceeds go to research. I suppose, it's those two areas in education and research that I'm particularly interested in. So, sort of, that's where I'll be, putting in a little bit more effort.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, we are so thankful actually for your effort and for both of you. And for those watching, Lily has offered so generously to do a book giveaway. So we'll be doing that on our page in the next couple of days. So look out for it, because it is really a remarkable, I suppose, learning tool for families, which was, your purpose and your goal of writing this book to begin with. But I just want to say thank you again to both of you. And yeah, it's really been wonderful chatting with you both.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Yeah.